Hey everybody, this is First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich, and we've got to talk about another tropical system, unfortunately, that could develop sometime today or tomorrow, and especially by the end of the week, and move up towards the Gulf of Mexico. Could be an impact on the United States, but it's still early, and that's the thing I always like to emphasize in this. Because the system hasn't formed yet, there's still a lot of uncertainty. But this is what we've been watching from the National Hurricane Center. I've been watching it as well. Some kind of tropical development down in here and then moving up. There's a 90% probability something's going to develop. You can see within the next 5 days. Hurricane Center puts out 90%. I agree with that. There's also a little low right here, which isn't going to form into anything, but that's kind of important because that eventually could bring some rain further to the north, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. But let me show you what this thing looks like. Here it is down here. And what I put on here real quickly, I'm going to take off the track there. That's our circulation. This is Nicaragua, this is Honduras, and you got Panama right here. And it's developed kind of tucked up against Central America. Now the water in here is super warm, so this is really warm water, but it's also really close to land, which could deter strengthening. But if it stays over open water, then we're not going to have much of an issue. This is what we call the consensus track. This takes all those spaghetti plots and kind of gives you an even mean kind of average track. Now, early on, that's kind of what you're going to see us use, and that's essentially what the Hurricane Center uses to draw that red blob of what they think the track is going to be. But let me show you the spaghetti plots, because I always like to show the spaghetti plots early on, just to show you the spread. The spread is key here. I don't focus on one track, but you look at the spread, and it kind of lines up pretty well with that track as well. And notice this is pretty tightly clustered early on, to be honest with you. The thing about modeling to remember, don't look at specific models. If I can tell you anything, do not look at specific model runs, because that eliminates other options that you could be looking at. Specific model runs are never going to be right. They're just kind of useful. They're never going to be correct. You know, we have that saying all the time. All models are wrong, but some models are useful. What you're looking at is a general trend in the track. So right now, I draw out a track something like that. That makes sense. I'm not picking out a single line and saying this is where it's going to make landfall 3, 6, 7 days from now. That's just not something that the science is capable of doing. But I will tell you this, the track is key, because tracks further to the east, the water in the eastern Gulf of Mexico is much warmer than it is up here towards the land. There is some warm water down in here. So where it tracks will eventually kind of dictate how strong it gets. And that's why intensity forecasting is just, you know, it's an impossibility sometimes. So we don't like to really get focused on intensity, because at this point it's hard to say, because the track's uncertain and we don't have a system yet. Let's remember that. Hurricane hunters are heading out there today. We don't actually know the center and initialization of this system for the model. So the models are kind of guessing right now. They need that initial input to really run correctly. So what about the steering? Well, here's the water vapor loop, and the one thing that is pretty surely going to happen is that there's going to be a ridge off the east coast, and it's going to flatten out and push out to the east. So what that's going to allow to do is pull this to the north. We've also got a trough digging in across the western part of the country like this. So if you look at the flow, this system eventually is going to get pulled up in this area and make this turn like that. That's why when you look at all the guidance, they're all kind of in agreement, because the overall atmospheric pattern is pretty easy to figure out, the steering current. The big question is the finer details. Where does it form? What's this precise track? I'll spit it out. And what is the intensity? So those are things we just don't know yet. But to kind of give you an idea of what the differences in the models are, and they're all over the place, we'll look at the GFS model first, because it's going to show us a solution far different than the European. So early on, we've got big competing solutions on how this is going to unfold. Remember that low I talked about over Florida? There it is. This is key, because this thing eventually is going to get pulled north and might be the rain that we get in the Carolinas early on. You can see that getting pulled into the eastern Gulf. And that thing, if it, you know, whatever it does, could end up eventually having a little bit of an impact on the potential Nate down the road. But you see that moisture spreading north well ahead of the system, which isn't even on the map yet. That can end up bringing us rain sometime Saturday night into Sunday. But here comes our system. You see more in the central Gulf of Mexico and a little bit weaker, moving towards Louisiana. And it almost looks like it's a double barrel thing, which is really odd. But look at all this moisture ahead of it. And this is the key. Everyone focuses, where is the center at? There's going to be a lot of rain up ahead of this system moving to the north. And you can see it moving in Sunday on the Gulf Coast really quick. So it moves in the end of the weekend and then moves up through central Tennessee. And there it is. Let me show you the European model, which is a little crazier. it's a much further east over that really warm water we talked about. And I'll move this over so you can see it. It actually brings that little low over Florida, moves it north. Same kind of scenario with the GFS, but the actual low coming out of the Caribbean is further east. It's in the eastern Gulf over that much warmer water, over the loop current. And it's much stronger and moves it a little bit slower because it takes until Sunday to kind of move it towards the Florida Panhandle late in the day, and then moves it up through Georgia and moves it basically right over the Carolinas. So far different solutions, but in both of these, it's none of these is really blowing this up into a huge, massive hurricane. They both look like weak hurricanes or strong tropical storms right now, because likely they're going to encounter some sheer and definitely colder water as they move north. Doesn't mean this couldn't explode, but remember, intensity forecasts are kind of all over the place, and you know it's kind of hard to figure out intensity this far out. But here's the thing that's interesting, is the spaghetti plots for a single model. Let's look at the European. This is what we call the ensembles, and if you look closely at these, you can see this shows you 51 different solutions, and it shows lows all over the place. So it could be anywhere in this area, and that's the one key thing I would leave you with early on here. This thing could literally be anywhere in here. It's not going to be a single dot somewhere on the map. It's going to be somewhere in here as we go into the weekend. So getting caught up in the specifics this early on is really not all that useful. So one of the things that I really like to look at are these ensembles, which are multiple versions of the model, just not a single deterministic is what we call it. These deterministic models are what people will share all over Facebook and Twitter, and they'll say, new model runs in, here's it. That's not the way to look at this. You look at the variations. So this, what you're looking at right here, and I'm going to plot it up again, is the European model. And you can see the variations. Some of the tracks go as far west as Louisiana and Texas. Some go as far east as Florida, but the mean is somewhere in the middle. So if you're looking at kind of a general idea, this gives you a better idea of all the possibilities, not just a single possibility, which almost is never going to happen in a computer model. And then we look at the GFS, which is the American model. It's more tightly clustered, and it's kind of more set on this Louisiana, Mississippi landfall. You notice how clustered this track is compared to the European. So that's the difference in the models, but you can see the variations that these different models are going to have based on the different initial settings that the model has. In ensemble forecasting, to me, is always the way you kind of want to look at these things, because it shows you all the possibilities and kind of gives you a mean. It doesn't just pick one random run and say, here's what's going to happen. It gives you a better idea of who should prepare and who shouldn't prepare, because it's kind of the cone, if you will, for the hurricane center. If you're in the cone or if you're in one of these tracks, then you still got a chance it could impact you. If not, then it starts to move out. One thing to keep an eye on is going to be water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico. So I talked a lot about the water temperature in the Gulf of Mexico and how the track could really determine how strong it gets. The one thing you notice, this is the water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico. There's a loop current right here. So if this system tracks over this area, it could get very strong. Or if it were to be over here, it would get very strong. But the water temperatures in here, and particularly up in here, are much, much cooler. So imagine the track comes up like this. It could get very strong and then weaken right before landfall. But if it's over here, it could be weaker and weaker over here. This little loop current, which is a pocket of really deep warm water, is really key, because if it tracks over that, that's the one area where it could intensify pretty quickly and become more of an issue. So it's something we're keeping an eye on right now. It's early on. Don't get caught up in specifics. You're going to put yourself into trouble for planning purposes. The bigger moral of the story for this is going to be a big rainmaker for the Carolinas. I'm not worried about wind or even severe weather at this point, though the track to the west would be more of a tornado threat that we'd have to watch. This is really going to be about rain, and this is going to end our dry period. So I will try to post updates every day as we get closer to the weekend to keep you up to date. But early on, this is what we know, and this is kind of what's out there. So I'll set it straight and give it to you the way I think it's going to happen. But right now, I'm not overly concerned with this system because it doesn't look like it'll be super strong. And because of where it's tracking, this would be less of a threat for the Carolinas, but a much-needed rainfall maker for us. Another update coming up today at 4, 5, and 6 on NBC Charlotte, and more vlogs coming over the next couple of days.